Elizabeth Porter, will you accept Dalton Morris as your lawfully wedded husband? The priest's voice rang through the garden like a bell, warm and unhurried, and I felt my whole chest fill up with something I had no name for. I had waited for this moment for 2 years. I had dreamed about it, quietly, the way you dream about things you are almost afraid to want too much. I was about to say yes. And then I heard it. A wail. Long, dramatic, and absolutely, spectacularly ridiculous. It came from somewhere behind the guests. Susan Morris, my soon-to-be mother-in-law, had apparently decided that the most appropriate response to her son's wedding vows was to perform a grief concert in my parents' garden. And right beside her, equally committed to the performance, was Savannah Smith, crying loudly, shoulders heaving, like she was the one losing something. Oh, sweetie. They thought that was their moment. Stay with me. My name is Elizabeth Porter. Lizzie to the people I love. I am 34 years old. I work in the accounting department of a food supplier company, and I am good at my job. I am the daughter of Arnold and Linda Porter, the little sister of Diana, and the best friend of Gina and Annie. I am a woman who was told, in 100 quiet and not-so-quiet ways, that she was not enough for the family she was marrying into. And I have just married the love of my life in my grandmother's garden, where 3 generations of my family have stood and made the same promise. This is the story of how we turned my in-laws' pettiness into the best wedding anyone in that garden had ever seen. For any of this to make sense, you need to know how we got here. Dalton and I met through my brother-in-law Louis, my sister Diana's husband, at a company barbecue. Louis and Dalton worked together in finance. Louis thought we would get along, pulled us together near the grill, and introduced us with the casual confidence of a man who has no idea he is about to change 2 people's lives. We talked for the rest of the afternoon. He walked me to my car when the party ended and asked if he could call me. I said yes before he even finished the sentence. We fell in love. We were happy. And after 2 years of that, we were about to get married. Everything was good. Until Dalton told his parents. Susan and Grant Morris were retired. They had been comfortable once, genuinely comfortable, the kind of life that comes with a certain way of carrying yourself. That comfort was gone now, lost in a business decision Grant had made years ago that nobody talked about openly. They had moved to Texas when the jobs were good and the money was flowing, and somewhere along the way they had cut ties with their family back in Maine. Too proud when they were rich, too ashamed when the money was gone to ever go back. So they performed. They still moved through the world like people who deserved better than what they were getting. And they had decided, long before I came along, that Dalton would marry Savannah Smith. Savannah lived 2 houses down from where Dalton grew up in Southlake. She had known him since they were small enough to run through each other's sprinklers. She was an area manager now, running 4 retail stores across the state, genuinely successful on her own terms. To Susan and Grant, she represented everything they wanted to hold on to, the success, the status, the life they used to have. I met them once, dinner at their home in Southlake. The moment I walked in, I knew they did not like me. Savannah was there too, which nobody had bothered to mention. Let me tell you, it was so awkward. They talked about her the entire evening, her job, her stores, her promotion, on. And then Dalton told them right there at the table that he loves me, that I was the one, that nothing was going to change that. We left right after that. After that came the calls, the texts, the pressure. Susan and Grant doing everything they could to make him reconsider. And then one day, Susan texted me directly. She asked me if she could pay me to leave her son. I stared at that message for a long moment. Then I walked over to Dalton and showed him the screen. He went quiet in the way people go quiet when they are genuinely angry. Then he called his mother. I only heard his side of the conversation, but it was enough. "Back off, Mom," he told her. "Let me live my life. I love Lizzie, not Savannah. This is done." After that, the calls slowed down. The texts stopped. Dalton had made his position clear. They had made theirs. Before we continue, let me tell you about my family. I will keep it short. My dad, Arnold, spent his career as an office manager, steady, reliable, the kind of man who listens before he speaks. My mom, Linda, was a secretary at a law firm for 20 years. She retired and immediately became someone who wears leggings and a t-shirt to almost everything, hair always in a messy bun, completely unbothered by what anyone thinks about it. And my sister Diana, 4 years older than me, the kind of woman who has been standing between me and trouble my whole life without ever making a big deal about it. These are my people. That is all you need to know. We got engaged on a Tuesday evening. Dalton had made dinner. Mid-conversation, he just looked at me and said, "I want to do this forever. Sit at a table with you and talk. Can we do that forever?" Then he pulled a ring out of his shirt pocket like he had been carrying it around, waiting for exactly the right sentence. I said yes before I started crying, which I consider one of my finer achievements. My parents were nothing but happy. Mom cried. Dad shook Dalton's hand for a long time and looked him in the eye the way my father looks at things he takes seriously. My parents wanted to meet Dalton's family before the wedding. A simple dinner. Nothing formal. Just the two families in the same room, the way families are supposed to do it. Of course, Dalton's parents said no. He came to tell my parents himself. He sat across from my mother and father and apologized, quietly, sincerely, like the weight of it belonged to him just because he shared their last name. He told them his parents had declined, that they had wanted him to marry someone else, that they had decided, without ever meeting the Porters, that there was nothing worth meeting. My father listened without interrupting. Then he nodded slowly and said nothing else. My mother looked at Dalton across the table and said simply, "Oh well, as long as you love my daughter and my daughter loves you, that is all we need to know." And that was that. Dalton told me later he almost cried at that table, that it was the most uncomplicated kindness anyone in his orbit had shown him in a very long time. We planned our wedding without the Morrisseys' involvement. Out of respect, we sent them a wedding invitation. They returned it, in 2 pieces. Dalton just looked at it and said nothing for a long moment. We were getting married in my parents' garden. The house is old, inherited, beautiful in that rustic way that comes from a place that has held a lot of living, old bones, warm and well-maintained, with some modern touches that make it comfortable without taking away what makes it special. Families had married in that garden for 3 generations before me. I wanted to continue that. It was never even a question. As for Dalton's family in Maine, they sent gifts, warm cards, and a little money. The relationship between them and Susan and Grant had been strained for years. They wished Dalton well from a distance and left it at that. He understood. He didn't hold it against anyone. It was one of those easy Saturday afternoons, 2 months before the wedding, and I was exactly where I wanted to be, at the bridal shop with my people. Diana was holding fabric swatches up to the light like she was appraising diamonds. My closest friends, Gina and Annie, my bridesmaids, were somewhere near the back debating shoes. Mom was settled into one of the velvet chairs, leggings, t-shirt, hair in its usual bun, perfectly content. She had already informed the attendant she was not trying anything on today. Dad was in the waiting area with a magazine. He came because he wanted to see the dress. Nobody argued. We had agreed on powder blue for the entourage, soft and pretty, the kind of color that makes everyone look like themselves. I was standing on a small platform in my wedding dress, looking at myself in a mirror 3 times my size, 2 months away from marrying the love of my life. Then my phone rang. I saw Dalton's name and smiled. I stepped off the platform and answered. "Lizzie." His voice was different, quieter, the kind of quiet that has weight behind it. "Listen to me. I need you to listen." I stopped moving. "I'm listening." This is what Dalton told me happened. He had just gotten home from running errands one Saturday afternoon. Jacket still on, keys still in his hand when his phone rang. It was his mom. He answered, because he always answered. "Dalton." Susan's voice was composed, deliberate. "It is not too late. You can still call this off. We can fix this." He set his keys on the counter. He had heard some version of this many times. "Mom, I love Lizzie. I am marrying her." "Then don't expect us to be at that wedding." A pause. "Final. Clean. Designed to land hard. Don't expect anything from us at all." "I know, Mom. I saw what you did with the invitation. Torn in half. Understood. We won't be expecting you," he said. "Bye, Mom." Silence on the other end. But the call hadn't ended. He could still hear something. Movement, breathing, voices just out of reach. He brought the phone back to his ear. "Hello? Mom, are you still there?" Nothing. She didn't answer. She hadn't heard him. She thought she had ended the call, but she hadn't. The line was still open and she had no idea. And then he heard it. His mother's voice, close and clear, talking to someone else entirely. Her tone completely different. Warm, soft, conspiratorial. The voice she used when she thought no one important was listening. He heard Savannah crying. He went completely still. "Don't cry, sweetheart." Susan's voice, low and reassuring. "Don't you cry. We are not going to let this happen without saying something." "Will it even matter?" Savannah's voice was small and broken. "Will he even care?" "Oh, he'll care," Susan said. "They'll all care. We'll make sure of it." A pause, her voice dropping into something cold and deliberate. "We are going to that wedding, all three of us, and we are going to wear black, like a funeral, because that is exactly what this is." Dalton stood in his kitchen and did not move. He listened until there was nothing left to hear. Then he quietly, carefully ended the call himself. He stood there for a moment in the silence of his apartment and made a decision. He was not going to fall apart. He was not going to call his mother back. He was going to warn his future wife and trust her completely. He picked up his phone and called me. "They're wearing black," he told me. "All three of them, Mom, Dad, and Savannah." A beat. Then, "Lizzie, just be ready. They will come, and they will try to embarrass us. I'm so sorry." "Don't be sorry," I said. "I love you. I'll see you at the altar." Then I hung up. Diana was already watching me. She had that look, the elder sister look, the one that says I don't know what just happened, but I am already on your side. "What's wrong?" she asked, looking worried. Gina and Annie, my best friends and bridesmaids, had drifted closer without me noticing. Mom had put down her tea. Dad appeared in the doorway from the waiting area, magazine in hand, looking around at all of us. "What's going on?" he said. I told them everything. The black outfits, all of it. The room went the kind of quiet that happens right before it goes very loud. Mom set her cup down slowly. Gina's eyes went wide. Annie grabbed Diana's arm. Diana's face moved through 6 expressions in 4 seconds. Surprise, disbelief, fury, and then something that settled into a look I knew well. The look that means she has already decided whose side she is on, and nothing in this world is going to move her. Dad set his magazine down on the nearest chair. He looked at the floor for a moment, and then something shifted in his expression. Not anger exactly. Something quieter and more settled. The slow, certain look of a man who has been patient for a very long time and has just thought of something very good. "How about we do this?" he said. He told us the plan. All of it. Standing right there among the tulle and the ribbon and the powder blue fabric that was about to become completely irrelevant. We all listened, and one by one the faces around me changed. Mom's stillness broke into a wide, slow smile. Gina covered her mouth with both hands. Annie grabbed Diana's arm even tighter. Diana looked at me with fire in her eyes and joy right behind it. I looked at my father. "Dad," I said, "you are a genius." He picked his magazine back up, went back to his chair, and said nothing else. Dad suggested a plan, and it was perfect. I woke up on my wedding day to a text from Dalton. "I love you. You make me the happiest man in the world, Mrs. Morris." I read it twice. Then I lay there in the quiet of the morning and smiled at my ceiling for a long moment. I typed back, "I love you too. See you at the altar." Then I got up and I'm marrying the love of my life. The garden was everything I had wanted. My mother's roses were in bloom along the fence. The old oak tree at the back had white ribbons tied through its branches. Chairs were arranged in 2 neat sections on either side of a grass aisle, and at the end of that aisle stood Dalton in his navy blue suit, looking like the answer to a question I had been asking my whole life. I walked down the aisle in white, Diana ahead of me, steady and sure. Gina and Annie just behind her, my bridesmaids, all 3 of them with quiet, knowing smiles. Mom and Dad were in the front row. Mom had actually worn a dress. A nice one. I almost cried right there before the ceremony even started. The priest began. The garden was warm and full of birdsong and the faces of the people who actually mattered. Everything felt exactly right. And then, at the back of the garden, the gate opened. They had planned their entrance down to the last detail. Arrive late, walk in during the vows, all eyes on them. black dresses, black suit, a statement so impossible to ignore that it would cast a shadow over the entire ceremony. Susan walked in first, then Grant, then Savannah. They stepped through the gate and stopped. The guests had turned to look at the late arrivals the way you look at anyone who walks in after a ceremony has started, and that was when Susan saw it. Every single person in that garden was wearing black. Susan's eyes moved across the chairs. She was looking for color, for contrast, for the pastels and soft florals that their black outfits were supposed to cut through like a knife. There was nothing to cut through. They looked exactly like everyone else. They had planned to be a statement, and they had walked straight into their own trap. The black outfits were just the dress code now. Nobody would ever know they had come to protest. Nobody would ever know they had meant anything at all by it. Their plan had not just failed, it had vanished completely. Grant's jaw tightened. Savannah's hand found Susan's arm. They stood there at the gate for 3 full seconds that must have felt like an hour, and then they quietly found 3 empty chairs at the back and sat down. The priest cleared his throat, and we continued. Dalton's yes came first, clear and steady, the voice of a man who had made his decision a long time ago and was finally saying it out loud. I heard something stir at the back. Susan shifting in her chair. Savannah pressing a handkerchief to her face, the quiet restlessness of people who had run out of moves and knew it. Then the priest turned to me. Elizabeth Porter, will you accept Dalton Morris as your lawfully wedded husband? And that is when they wailed. A full, open, unrestrained sound that rose up from the back of the garden and was clearly deliberately designed to rattle me, to make me hesitate, to cast a shadow over the moment. Their last resort, and they used everything they had left. Around them, heads turned. Aunts, uncles, cousins, people who had known me my whole life, people who had driven hours to be in that garden today. They turned in their chairs and looked at Susan, Grant, and Savannah with a look that needed no words. A look that said, very clearly and very calmly, "Don't." Susan faltered but continued to wail. Grant went still. Even Savannah's crying quieted just slightly under the weight of all those eyes. I looked at Dalton. He looked at me, his eyes steady, his jaw set, that small nod that said everything. I see you. I chose you. Don't you dare let them take this moment. I took one breath. Yes, I said it so loud that it carried all the way to the old oak tree. And before another sound could rise from the back of the garden, my family erupted. Diana's whistle split the air. Mom laughed through her tears and gripped Dad's arm. Gina and Annie were on their feet. The guests clapped and cheered, and the sound of it filled every corner of that garden and swallowed everything else whole. The wailing got buried, completely and permanently. The priest smiled. Dalton took my hands. I now pronounce you husband and wife. The cheering was still rising when Susan stood up. Her face was red. Her jaw was set. She had that look, the look of a woman who came here to say something and was not going to leave without saying it. She took one step forward and opened her mouth. Grant grabbed her arm. Susan? His voice was low. Don't. She looked at him. Then she looked at the garden, at all those people still on their feet, still cheering, still completely consumed by the celebration happening in front of them. Not one person had turned to look at her. Not one person had noticed she was standing. The moment she had planned, the statement she had come to make, it had been swallowed entirely by the sound of people who loved me. Nobody was watching. Nobody cared. Susan closed her mouth. Her face went from red to something quieter and more difficult to name. Grant kept his hand on her arm. Savannah was already on her feet, head down, eyes on the ground. Without a word, the 3 of them turned and walked toward the gate. It closed behind them. The cheering didn't stop. The music started. Not a single person in that garden noticed they were gone. The reception filled the garden as the afternoon turned golden. Long tables appeared under the old oak tree, strung with lights. My father had spent a weekend hanging through the branches. The roses along the fence caught the last of the sun. People ate and laughed and told stories and danced on the grass. Dalton and I moved through it all together, his hand in mine, and I felt something I had not expected, not relief, not triumph, just the deep, settled peace of a woman who is exactly where she is supposed to be. Near the end of the evening, Dalton found me under the oak tree. He took both my hands. "Are you happy?" he asked. I looked around the garden, at my mother dancing with my father in the grass, at Diana laughing at something Louis said, at Gina and Annie swaying to the music with their arms around each other, at the old house behind us glowing warm from the inside. "Yes," I said. "Are you?" He smiled, the real one, the one that reaches all the way. "More than I've ever been," he said. We danced. Under the oak tree in my grandmother's garden, on the same ground where my grandparents had danced before us. And that was enough. That was everything. I heard Savannah left Texas not long after the wedding. She went home to Las Vegas, back to where her parents were, back to where she was from. She left before the videos from the wedding could spread, before the story could take on a life of its own. I hope she found some peace there. I genuinely do. Susan and Grant went back to Southlake and told their version of events to anyone who would listen. The thing is, their family is all the way up in Maine. The same family they cut off when the money was good and were too ashamed to face when it was gone. So they told their story to neighbors who didn't know us and acquaintances who didn't really care. They performed their grievance for an empty theater. Dalton called them eventually. Patient, honest, kind, the way he always is. He told them the door was not closed, but he also told them that things would have to be different, that his wife was not a problem to be managed. What happens next is up to them. About a week after the wedding, lying on a beach in Hawaii, my phone buzzed. It was Susan. "We would love to have you both for dinner when you're back. We think it's time we properly got to know you, Lizzie." I showed Dalton. He read it, set his sunglasses back on his face. "Don't reply," he said. "I'll deal with it when we get back home." He took my hand. "Mrs. Morris, let's enjoy Hawaii." So that is exactly what we did. They came to our wedding in black to make a statement. We just made a better one. So, there you go, folks. That is our story for today. I hope you liked it, and if you did, please smash that like button and subscribe. Write what you think of the story in the comments. And please tell me where you are from. I would love to hear your input, and I want to know where my stories reach you. Thank you so much for listening. This is Melodic Vengeance, and I will see you on the next one. Take care, okay?
If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and drop a comment below. Don't forget to follow for more content just like this. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.